one podcast, mining the Magic the Gathering community for salt. This is the Howling Salt Mine.
It's the Howling Salt Mine. The Howling Salt Mine.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Howling Salt Mine podcast, the podcast where we delve into those salty, salty mines of the Magic the Gathering community, find the saltiest stories, the saltiest posts that we love, those salty confessionals that we want to hear, put them in our mine cart, and bring them right back up to you, our dear prospectors at home. As always, I'm your host, Sam, and I'm joined today by my singular co-host, Mike. Say hey, Mike.
Hello. Hey, Mike.
Tony's not here, dude.
No, he's not. Again, he's done it again. I did see him yesterday, though. So
Really?
I'm
person?
In person. So
Oh,
I'm a
man.
little bit less mad than I am on
What
an
a dirty
average
rat.
Tony missing episode.
He didn't visit me. What a piece of shit.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, business calls, and Tony had to fly to Boston, which ironically, is like the kind of area of the map where we live. And that means he can't record, even though he's, within 30 minutes of both of us. So, Well, before we start, we have to shout out our nice tier patrons. Thanks for the support, y'all. We have Hephaestus Bolts, Prime Speaker Florian, Yef Judge, and Accidental TPK.
thanks, y'all.
Thanks for the support. You guys rock.
You the best.
But even though Tony isn't here, this minecart is still pretty full today. We've got some other seats that are filled, and we are happy to say that we have two nerds with us. That's right, nerds of the nitpicking variety. We have Beezy and Mia from Nitpicking Nerds with us today. What's going on, you two?
We're doing good. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, we love to be here. Thanks for having us.
We're here in the mine cart.
Yeah, glad to have you in the mine. Hopefully, you got like a hard hat and a pickaxe and the safety equipment you need.
I got anything you need for this analogy.
Yeah.
We're salty and we love to be here.
Awesome. We'd love to hear it. Well, yeah, thanks for jumping on. So for people who aren't familiar with the Nitpicking Nerds, which are probably only a handful out there,
If even that.
tell us a little bit about yourselves. I mean, you guys are one of like the biggest Magic the Gathering YouTube presences out there.
For the 10 of you out there that don't know, we make Magic the Gathering Commander videos on YouTube every single day, actually, for like 950 days now.
Yeah, we do a lot
Wow.
of budget related things. We like to review pre-cons and new sets. And we just like to show that you could build a commander deck on with basically whatever restrictions you want, whether that's like janky or whether you want to do something super powerful or budget or whatever.
So basically, we're the MacGyvers of deck building. You give me
Hell
like
yeah.
a shoestring and a piece of gum, and I'll give you like a Yarok deck.
I was like, I do have a $20 Yarok deck. He's building a $10 Carador deck right now.
That's what it is.
10.
10.
Oh my
10.
gosh.
It's
That's
crazy.
pretty sick. So that's basically 10 cents a card, right? That's what
Pretty
you're
much,
working
yeah.
with. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why it's like
awesome.
that's why we keep trying to get Alan, mental misplay Alan, to do a $20 deck, and we'd love to play against you guys to also have $20 decks. They all
Yeah.
balance each other out really well.
Mia will recommend that to anyone who asks, or
Absolutely.
Yeah.
people who don't ask sometimes.
Correct.
It sounds like it might break the bank a little bit, so I'm not sure I can put one of those
The piggy
together.
bank, yeah.
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 I mean, sometimes Beezy comes around and he'll be building a 20 and be like, ooh, 45 cents. That's a little too expensive for this deck.
How much is that bulk rare from Ixalan? Oh, it's 80 cents. Damn it.
That's not good enough.
That's so wild.
Not even close.
Way too much.
I have a $40 deck, but like pushing it down to $20 there's a lot of stuff that you can't include at that level. That's
Yeah, you
crazy.
lose out on, I think you even lose out on Soul Ring because it's like $1.20 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Soul Ring
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
make it into most of our
Probably.
20s.
Yeah, I mean, you miss out on a lot of the good mana rocks. Like you're probably getting like the ETB tapped mana rocks, and if that, maybe some mana dorks.
Oh, your mana base is very scrappy too.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't even have enough for Arcane Signet. Arcane Signet's like 83 cents. That's a lot. $20 deck.
Yeah, that's
Can't
steep.
do it.
That's gone down a fair amount too, which is crazy.
Yeah, but then you get to say like, if somebody plays like turn 1 Blood Crypt, pay 2 life, you're like, oh, must be nice.
yeah,
Yeah, someone will play a Rhystic Study and go, that's more than my entire deck's worth. Times 2. Like,
The salt value of that
amazing.
is well worth it.
Yeah.
I do love that element of like people can't get salty about your deck because it costs $20 when
Yeah.
you're like stomping them into the ground.
It's good.
yeah.
It's good.
He did just gain like over 700 life with a $20 deck.
Holy
That's
shit.
cool. That was cool.
That is
It's
sick.
wild.
I have a dream of getting a $1 deck at some point because my
Ooh.
favorite Scryfall search is the USD equals 0.01. So you will be the first to know when it actually
Ooh.
comes to fruition.
Yeah,
That would be
we
interesting.
love that.
That would be the crustiest deck ever.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of vanilla creatures. I'll put it
Mhm.
that way.
A few grizzly bears never hurt anybody.
Yeah, but shockingly, grizzly bears is probably like, it's probably too expensive.
It's a bear, so it's an Ayula.
Yeah.
That's got to be so limiting on the commanders that you can pick as well, right? Because it's like what commanders are so cheap that you can build a $10 deck around them? I mean, probably a lot, probably more than
You
you
could splurge
think.
a little. I mean, I feel like you could maybe go up to $1
Mm.
Wow.
with a $10 commander because it's like, what does it really make a difference if your average card is 10 cents or 9 cents? It probably won't matter that much.
Yeah.
But like Mia, like I have Carador, and that's one of my favorite. Like I have a CDH Carador. I have a Carador that's only the cards that are like nostalgic to me. And then I'm like, well, what if I built a $10 one? And Mia's like, oh, I could build a $10 Kalia.
I
It's
like
like
it all.
Kalia's $8. It's like, no.
Yeah, so I think with the budgets though, you do get a lot of cards that you're not used to. My $20 Yarok deck, $20 is crazy considering Yarok used to be $10 before the reprint.
It's her baby.
And then
Yeah.
just shot down to $1. There's Baldur's Gate has so many good commanders for super cheap. I
Yes.
highly recommend
bet.
starting there. The backgrounds are also really cheap.
Yep.
And like you get a lot of really cool mechanics.
Oh, that's awesome. That's good to think about. So I heard about budget building and kind of got really into it from Moderately Anonymous MTG and then
Yeah.
Ken
That's
Bauman.
cool.
And the way that they build their decks is that they don't include the commander and they don't include basic lands in the budget. So it's a little bit cheesier, but it opens up basically any possible commander for that budget.
Yeah.
So like my Gyruda deck, for example, I don't include the basics and I don't include Gyruda.
We don't do basics either. They're free. You can go find a basic land on the sidewalk.
Yeah, we use Moxfield and we just use whatever their update to cheapest is with the TCG player pricing. It does include the commander, but it does not include the basics. So you
Okay,
do have a
that's
little
fair.
bit of wiggle room.
Yeah, I think that's good because the other day, like something weird happened with swamps and all the swamps were like 20 cents each. And I was like, what the heck? Like, why? Who's paying 20 cents for a swamp right
Yeah,
now?
what's going on,
Yeah.
you sucker?
See, it's funny though, because when it comes to lands, you can do that, obviously, but when you build a colorless deck, wastes are included in the price.
Oh,
So-
that makes sense.
I mean, wastes cost money. You can't just find a waste.
Yeah.
So you have to
Yeah.
build with like uncharted territory, mech hanger, and like
Yeah, some real
to get the colorless stuff. And he was trying to build a $20 colorless deck.
I couldn't get something I liked. The mana base was awful. Like to look at it hurt. I think I could have afforded. I think I afforded one waste,
Only one?
It's like $1
maybe
something.
maybe two.
You just never had the colors you needed too.
It was a lot. It was. I was like, I can't do that. I can't look at this. I have to read all these lands and they don't do anything.
I love it.
Well, just to harp on my one note thing, there are 13 available commanders for 1 cent. So
Oh,
the $1 deck is truly possible.
Wow.
are there any ones that are like more than one color too?
Yeah, what's the spiciest one?
So Valduk, Keeper of the Flame, is a mono red
Oh,
commander.
yeah.
There's probably so many bad equipments that are
There's
one.
so
cent.
many 1 cent
Absolutely.
equipments. And then Shauna, Sisse's Legacy is
Okay.
also good.
Yeah.
And there's also a Wrath, Weatherlight Stalwart, and
Hmm.
Butterbur Bree Innkeeper. So you got some multicolor options.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly think it's pretty easy. Even if you did a $5 deck, I think you could build like a feather deck for like $5. I think
Mm.
that was like a bunch of cheap.
Depending on how much feather is.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe.
Oh, yeah.
8-ish cents, I think. I thought.
Oh yeah, she might be a bulker.
I was like considering she's been reprinted a few times, and then a bunch of cheap combat tricks and stuff.
Yeah. I think Zeta Hedron Grinder is in a similar category. One of my friends built like an $8 Zeta
Yeah.
Zada, however you say it, an $8
probably, like,
version of
top
that
tier.
deck. And it was like insane for $8 because the cards it plays are trash in every deck except for that one deck.
Yeah.
And in
Yeah.
that one deck, they're gross.
Well, and then the deck's like, I was gonna lose the game if you killed Zada anyway. It doesn't matter that my deck is $50 or $8.
Yeah.
We got our ass kicked at a con recently, and it was a dude with a budget Tivit deck, and he splurged on Time Civ
Oh,
and
yeah.
like nothing else.
It's like
Yeah.
turns out.
Kicked.
Yeah.
Turns out an A plus B combo from the command zone. That's all
Really
the
good.
good card you need.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah, it was like a $20 deck, and most of it was Tivit and Time Civ.
Yeah, that's the first budget deck I ever played against was, well, other than the Zeta deck, was Tivit. And it was Tivit Time Civ. And on like turn 5, they got it. And we were like, well, That's it.
All right, guess I should have
Gee.
expected it.
Anyone
Yeah,
who thinks you need to pour a ton of money into Magic to make a good deck is completely like crazy.
Yeah, even
Yeah.
like this $10 deck I'm building with Carador, I was like, Karmic Guide. If I want to splurge on Karmic Guide and Revelark, they're like 40 cents each. I could do it.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
also
and
building a
have some
fourth Carador
combos.
deck too. So
Well, that's for later, you know.
And I got to get on your level because I have a similar
Obsession.
loving relationship with Marath, Will of the Wild. Yeah, I'm obsessed. I have a casual deck and a CDH deck. I really need to like branch out and start making some fun jank with that.
You need to bring a 5-caser, one of those like
Yeah.
like Dragon Shield, like boulder thing, not boulder things, but like the big
the archives.
yeah,
and
the
stuff.
archives is like this is my Carador archive.
That's actually
Yes.
just gonna be him in like 6 weeks or something.
I'm ready. I'm ready to be that guy.
You
What deck
want to
did
be
you
able
bring to
to
this con? I brought Carador.
Yeah.
Carador, CEDH Carador, casual Carador. Yeah, of course.
It's all about a 7.
Of course, every deck's a 7.
you want to be able to field an entire pod of Carador players.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
And you could use the 1999 Carador deck.
Yeah.
And you can use the budget.
And I'll be on CDH Carador.
Who can get to their Bajuka Bog first? Well, let's jump into it and learn a little bit more about you two. So the way that we kick off our show and we have a guest on is we do have a pretty grueling exam. You know, we say this in every episode, or at least we've been saying it lately, but if you fuck up on any of your responses, we will cut the audio. Mike and I will continue the episode, and you two will just kind of have to watch in silence. We won't let you leave the Zoom room.
Yeah.
That's just kind of how it is.
That's rough.
We're
Yeah.
locked in.
Yeah, it's tough.
You know, there's only one way out of the mine, and we only have one cart, so it makes sense.
I've done more for less.
Understandable.
So our first question for you both is, how did you get into Magic?
Do you want to kick this off or do you want
Well, there's a lot of pressure, so why don't you do it?
Okay. I started playing Magic in 2015 around Shadows over Innistrad. I was dating someone at the time, and I was like, what are you doing, you big nerd? You're playing Magic, you're in a dark room alone, and like you're with your friends, and you just have to sit at a table for hours touching cardboard. Like, that's so lame. And,
So toxic.
so toxic. And he would I'd be somewhat interested considering he was like, this piece of cardboard is worth $40 and I have a playset of them. I don't know what a playset means, but that's cool. And it's like 4 Lilies of the Veil at the time, which obviously were very expensive.
Yeah.
And then after that, there was a LAN cafe that sold Magic cards on my college campus that was closing down, and everything was like nuked to the ground in terms of price. I'm like, okay, if you're gonna get me into Magic, you're gonna get me in right now. You'll
Yeah.
like build me a deck, and I will try it once. And he built me an Elf Ball deck, and it was like really fun. And I have had a really good time playing ever since. I had a bunch of like coat of arms in there and taunting out things that are not always in elf decks nowadays, but they're in my lateral deck because it's a love letter to my old
Nice.
elf deck. And I started playing in Shadows over Innistrad, so I really loved Brazella and the art on there. And I started also playing like Rakdos Vampires, like Madness, which was one of the most confusing decks to learn as someone who's been playing Magic for 2 months. I got my ass kicked in a Eldritch Moon draft, and then I put down Magic for a little bit because I was doing college until I picked up the Edgar Markov Precon, and I've been a Mardu player ever since.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Wow. Every once in a while, we hear a backstory and we're like, that's a villain backstory
Yeah.
for a Magic player. And I think that's up there. Edgar
You
Markov.
nerd.
I played against that Edgar deck too, and I think that's my one experience playing against an Edgar deck was playing against your deck. So I forget which episode it was, but one of our salty cards of the week was Edgar Markov, and
Nice.
anything that I said in that was referencing me as
Hey,
Chad.
we gotta go watch that.
Obviously.
We gotta go watch that episode.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That was completely. So the deal with that deck is that it usually doesn't pop off, and I made like a few changes to it, and it's been like singing ever since. And it wasn't that good before I've changed like 6 cards for some reason. So I did not expect it to do anything because I had been trying to tune it for a really long time. I didn't
It was like
understand
right
why.
around when you start getting deck advice from me. It was
No.
weird. So weird.
No, absolutely not. But I was running like 33 vampires in it at the time, and then it started singing, and all I had to do was bump it up to like an absurd number, like 40 something, which is kind of crazy.
Oh my gosh.
But that's why I was like, oh no, I'm so sorry. That is like the power level was insanely way too high because I was like, it doesn't work usually. It usually doesn't work.
How is that not one of the most annoying things you've ever heard sitting across? It doesn't normally do this, guys.
Oh.
That is the anthem.
I do not have a horse in that race. I can't say anything about that because we had a Patreon game night, and like the people who were in that game night right now are probably rolling their eyes. Where I was playing my Alesha human deck, and I said the exact same thing. I was like, "This never ever happens," and I just crushed the table. And
it's like reverse impotence. Like, I'm so sorry.
I swear this never happens.
It happens to everyone.
Oh gosh, so
That's
good.
my villain backstory.
I love it. I love it.
I think I might have a more of a hero backstory just because I'm not a dick to people. I started when I was like, I think I was 12 in like 5th grade, and my friend had brought in some like, I don't know what they were, but it was like 2007, 2008 at the time. So picture a 2008 card. He brought that in, and I was like, well, I've seen that before because my dad apparently had bought like Portal Second Age, like a starter box, and it had been sitting like on the entertainment center for years. And I was like, oh, I finally know what that is. Can I just like have that? And he's like, sure. I just thought it looked cool. So I opened it, and really like that set, I don't know how I took any interest from it, but like that's got to be one of Magic's lowest like points in terms of look how exciting this game is. Oh my God. But I somehow got into it, and then I just started like, oh, whoa, coercion, like 2 and a black. I can take any card. It's like once I started learning the rules, we would play like this, horrible warped version of Magic where like at the lunch table, we were still in 5th grade. We were just playing like, there's a card called Kaleidostone, and it's like 2 mana, draws a card, and you can pay 5 and tap and sack it to add Wooburg. We didn't really look up what the rules were. So add Wooburg meant go find a plains forest, mountain, swamp, island, and put them just into play.
Classic.
So we had a lot of different experience with Magic, but it turns out it was still great. And I ended up actually a couple years later, the first like F&M deck I built was also Elf Ball. So we had that in common.
Oh, that's awesome.
That is a fun thing. I feel like people getting lands out of their base when something taps for a color is like
It's so good.
We were like, what the hell is a mana pool? What is that? Well, that must be the lands that you have because there's a stack of them on the bottom. So let me go add that to this mana pool.
That's fair.
And I love that Magic somehow remains fun even when you're playing complete wackadoodle rules for it. You know, like it's still a good time.
Yeah, we used to play. It was Magic because it was just we would play with all the rules we thought were correct before. Having gained a little bit of knowledge on it, it was pretty good.
See, Beezy hates hearing this from me, but I was like, yeah, before like I met you and before COVID happened, I used to hang out with all my friends who used to play Magic all at once. And he hates hearing this because I was like, yeah, all of our games would be 6 players and we take 3 or more hours to complete. And it was really rare that we ever finished one game in an entire night. And he hates hearing this every time because he goes, if a game lasts more than 45 minutes, I want to die.
That's not what I say. My hour and a half. Hour and a half is my limit for like, okay, what are we doing?
And then I'm like, our games, we'd be lucky if they ended at 3 hours.
Oh my gosh.
How do you even pay attention?
So you said that they wouldn't end in one night. Would you like leave the cards and come back to it the next day? Or would you just be like, well, we're done.
Yeah,
no more.
Well, we had fun. Have a good one.
I can't even like
one person might get out, the 5 of us might still be playing. We go, have a good one.
That's so I'm with Beezy. 6-player games I cannot abide by. Just play 2 pods of 3.
Yeah, I couldn't anymore. Nowadays, I would rather just do like 1 pod, but like 2-head giant like teams or something. Like
that's a good way of doing it too.
I think that's pretty fun.
5-player, I like Star because it'll
Star is good.
Amount to like a 4-player game in length.
I think Emperor is pretty fun.
Yeah, Emperor.
I still haven't even worked out the rules of Emperor yet. You tell me all the time.
Yeah, Emperor's fun, man. You just have to like
maybe I don't know.
Everyone's on like the same page.
Yeah, that's true.
The thing with Emperor is that you can have like a combo deck. And just combo off and then like chew through the people in a line until you hit the Emperor and then you just win.
You gotta like have a rule 0 because I remember there's like, oh, it's a hidden roll. It's like I go infinite. Does the king win if he goes infinite? Great. Oh, how about I'm the bandit? Does the bandit win if he goes infinite? Great.
Oh, that one. Yeah,
that's the other one that I played
one too.
And it's like it doesn't matter if you have like a
Mafia,
weird... Yeah, like the combo decks just kind of ruin that stuff. And it's like, oh, Star. It's like I went infinite. It's like, what are you doing? Get out of
here. Those are weird with alternate win conditions because you're just like, okay, who won after this? Like, let's go to the weird rule book that we have on the side.
The only question I ask is, what's wrong with you? Why did you just? What did you think this was? Oh, you can attack the player that's across from you. It's like, did you mean go infinite? Okay.
Oh yeah, Jesus Christ. Yeah, when people have combos in games that are not at that meta, especially when there's like more than 4 people. You're like, what are you doing?
Mhm.
Well, that's like if I reach for my combo deck in that situation, that tells you how much I want to play a 5-player game or not.
Right.
Because if I really don't want to play a 5-player game, I'm like, yeah, let's play 5 players, guys. Oops,
Sure.
I went infinite. Game's over. Let's play 4 now.
One of you has to leave.
Didn't I see the 3 of you in a 5-player game?
Yes.
You probably did.
Probably.
Yeah, I think I did at the game store.
And that was Mike. That was the game where I had the turn 2 combo win in my hand with Kave.
Yeah, with Devoted Druid and
Yeah, I didn't play it though. With Devoted Druid, Swift Reconfiguration, and Walking Ballista, I felt too mean. I was like, if I combo off right now, then
everyone's gonna hate me.
These 4 are just gonna have a 4-player game, and I'm not gonna be invited. I'm just gonna be sitting on the side.
Yeah, there is the power move of like, especially with some like people you don't know. It's like they show up like a 5-player or a 4-player game. They just blatantly lie about rule 0 and they combo on turn 2. And I love the idea of someone being like, okay, who's next? And then they just keep going without that person.
Yeah.
They just take, it's like, oh, what a perfect like little
I love
justice.
that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've had people offer that up where they had the combo and they showed it and they're like, I have the combo. This is it. We all acknowledge that I can win right now. Let's just keep playing and I won't cast it. And that was like that's only happened once or twice and it was a pretty interesting vibe. It was kind of cool.
Less aggressive, but
Yeah.
I'll take it.
I think it's respectful. I don't run combos in most of my decks, so it's never like not something I expect to see, I guess, because I don't know. Usually it's like, ooh, if you stumble into a combo, I guess it's fine. But since I'm not running them, I kind of blindly assume that most people are not.
Yeah.
Tutoring for them.
Bringing it up's good. Like, I think that if you kind of like could kill the table and you don't, I just find that annoying, like patronizing. But bringing it up is way different, where it's like, hey guys, like, what do you want to do here?
Yeah.
In this situation, do you want to just play without me, or because like I didn't think this was going to happen, or whatever? And it's like, or you want me to just not cast it? Like that's better. But if someone's just like, I don't know, there's just a whole thing of like, I like to let my opponents do X, Y, Z. Is like, what?
Yeah, there's like a playing with your food element for
It's
sure.
really-
that can happen.
Yeah.
Maybe get into it later. But I have no idea.
Yeah, well, I'll get to that when we talk about
So you're
salt.
saying I should have comboed out on turn 2 in that 5-player game?
Yes. I think that is what I'm saying.
Well, this perfectly brings us to our next question that we like to ask people, which is, what makes you salty?
I definitely think mine is I hate when people will play with their food during Magic. I think there's one thing where you accidentally punt. I think we're all definitely guilty of it one time or another, maybe every other time. Who knows? Definitely not us. But
Well, like take a 2-minute turn and realize you didn't do much.
yeah, but I hate the people who knowingly like have the win in their hand. And I'm not talking about like a turn 2 combo. I mean, like you have lethal on board if you cast like the Crater Hoof. You go, pass, I guess,
Yeah, and like don't swing in. It's like, like what are you doing?
So take it out of your deck then, I guess.
I get if you are like, oh, I miscounted. I thought if I swung out, you'd have 2 life left and I would have killed you, but I like didn't realize. That's different than like I just don't feel like it. I've had that happen a bunch of times and I'm not a fan.
No.
Or sometimes I've had opponents like they get so far ahead that they just stop thinking about it and they just start making random plays. I'm like, please, dear God, I can't beat you. Just kill me, please. It would be so much better for me if you just kill me.
Start a new game.
I think for me, something that really gets me annoyed is, and this is definitely like not tainted, but it's like a lot of it has to do with like playing so many games with fans at conventions and like having like YouTube comments plays a little bit of factor. But the first one, not so much comments. It's like when we say the rule 0 stuff, we're like, we don't really play tutors too much. We don't really play fast mana and we don't play any infinite combos. Like that's usually where our decks are at. It's a pretty good like snapshot of what we're playing. People will be like, yeah, totally. And then like we had a game where after that discussion, this dude's like, all right, turn 1, planes pass, and then it gets to the end step and he's like, enlightened tutor for soul ring, and we're just like, did you hear any of what we just said? Because that's like, how did you break 66% of what we said with your first play of the game? That stuff annoys me. Or people will say like they'll play soul ring and it's like, oh, thought we said no fast man. Like soul ring, like it's the second best card in the format.
I also hate people who are like, you said new tutors and like I have demonic tutor and I tutor and you tutor too. It's like a fetch land.
Terramorphic.
Are you considering evolving wilds and demonic tutor the same card? Like,
Cultivate as a tutor.
Yeah, it's technically a tutor.
Like,
okay,
yeah,
cool.
Yep. How honest of you.
They better be grabbing a land with the demonic tutor after.
Yeah. Show me a basic.
Yeah,
show me the land you grabbed.
Oh, who did I hear this from? Someone was like, yeah, someone runs demonic consultation in their deck, but they only name swamp.
Oh, you heard that from me. Yeah,
there we go. I was
that's
like,
one of our listeners, Dash Hope 69, told me that he plays demonic consultation in his mono black deck just to get land. I
That's
was
funny as
that's a
hell.
Flex.
Swap cycles. More complicated swap cycling.
Yeah, right.
I can't imagine what he thought of when Troll of Khazad-dûm was spoiled. Oh my god. What an
Lost his
upgrade.
mind. Doesn't exile enough of his deck for him, so
That's true,
probably
that's
not
fair.
worth
Yeah.
it.
So it's interesting that you say Soul Ring is fast mana, because I think often when people are like, I'm on fast mana or I'm not on fast mana, I think like Chrome Mox and, Mox Amber and like Mana Vault and Mana Crypt and all that kind of stuff. But I never think of Soul Ring because I just assume everyone runs it in their deck for the most part. But then again, like you said, those $10, $20 budget decks, Soul Ring is a potential cut in those lists. So is that something that you guys run into a lot?
I don't like the idea that Soul Ring is like clearly. I don't think anyone would debate that it's top 5 cards in the format.
Oh, yeah.
And like just because a card is like 2 cents doesn't mean that everybody should play it, or just because it's in precons doesn't mean it. So it's like I always just like get indignant instead of just going, like, oh, everyone plays. I'm just like, why are you doing this? Stop,
That's
stop playing this.
that's why I was gonna be like, oh, I can name Beezy's saltiest thing. It's Soul Ring.
Well, me and the old host Joe used to say like Soul Ring has ruined more games of Commander than any other Magic card, and it's not even close.
Yeah, I guess
That's a
my
good
thought
point.
on it is like Mana Crypt. If it was 20 cents, would everyone still play it, and would you still consider it fast mana?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point.
It's a whole thing.
Mana Crypt is the one that like people can die from. Like we had a casual game a couple weeks ago where our friend Nick, he was playing his Mogus deck, and Mogus is just like, slow group slug, and he's draining himself a little bit too.
He like pings you.
Yeah, group slug and stuff.
And he had a Mana Crypt on like turn 1 or 2, and we were kind of giving him some flack for it. But he almost died to his Mana Crypt because he just failed almost every single trigger on it.
That's justice.
Yeah, it
It's
really
justice.
was. Well, shall we get into it? We got some salty stories here,
I'm ready.
and I'm ready to read them. Let's rip into it. So we're going to be talking about some salty stories and getting into that salt.
But Sam, what is salt?
Salt is frustration in the game. Tony usually says that. Well, we give him a pass.
It's not my job.
We really like to say these days that salt is an umbrella term. It's really everything from the little grains to the full shakers. It can just be, someone's at the table, maybe their vibe is weird, maybe they're shutting down deals, maybe they're really terse with how they're interacting with the pod, and it's just kind of making you feel a little weird, but the gameplay is fine. Salt can also be someone just keeps targeting you and removing your commander over and over and over again when you're not the threat, just to fuck with you, and you want to throw your cards across the room. So salt really has this huge expanse of what it can be. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're here to talk about salt so we can learn about our own salty tendencies and hopefully not be salty in a future game.
Mm-hmm.
It's an educational show, is what we like to say.
Salt's a spectrum.
Exactly. So salt is a spectrum. There's so much that falls under that umbrella. There really is. And I got some lovely salty stories. So how about we jump into our first one here?
Hell yeah.
Please.
Yeah, why don't you read us one?
So our first salty story comes to us from our website. It was a website submission, which if people don't know our website, it's howlingsaltmine.com or thehowlingsaltmine.com. We're inconsistent with so our website might as well also be inconsistent. And the post is titled, "Has your LGS ever had to ban anyone from Commander Night?" And this comes to us from our friend Swell. And the story goes, "My LGS holds weekly Commander Nights in which they match you in pods based on 3 levels of play: casual, optimized, and competitive. The overwhelming majority of people make an honest effort to keep their decks in the same ballpark, but every now and again, you get one of those people. I got matched with this particular guy 2 weeks in a row. Week 1, he hits us with, 'It's a group hug deck. I'm not even playing to win,' as he pulls out his Kineos and Tiro deck of 95 proxies. He wins, and a few turns later, with his whole deck in his hand and Jace, Lab Maniac, and Thassa's Oracle on the board. Wow, this has never happened. Does he know that's what they all say? One of the other players even caught him trying to peek at the top card of his library. Who does that?"
That's lame.
Yeah, that's kind of wild.
Yeesh.
Week 2, it's a different deck, some wild Golgari control business. It's a really cool deck, but I can tell where things are going. I remind him what happened last week and asked if he can match the power level a little better, but he has the same excuse. "I'm not even trying to win," he proclaims, as I catch a glimpse of his Sylvan Library and Gaia's Cradle while he's shuffling. A few turns in, it's pretty much the same story. I say, we're all just top decking for an answer, right? Why don't we just concede and move on? because I'm not really looking forward to a repeat of last week, this time with 100% more Nether Void on board. Wow, that card fucking sucks.
That's awful.
The other two shrugged and smiled at me blankly, but didn't really answer. So I scooped, but the others ended up playing it out. I couldn't tell if they thought they could still pull something out or if they didn't know any better despite my warnings. Either way, we sat there and watched Mr. Hug play for 3 more turns in a row before he won. I confronted him both times, and I said, all of us are playing the same kind of decks that can't answer the kind of board state that you're bringing. Maybe you should try an optimized pod. He shrugged it off and said, group hug is casual. I rolled my eyes and asked the staff not to match us together again. I played a pickup game with him the next week. He hadn't been allowed into the event, and he used a precon, and it was a perfectly pleasant game. How can he not see the difference? I don't really care that almost all of his cards are proxies, but at least bring cards that are at the appropriate power level, you know? Anyways, thanks for hearing me out and have a salt-free day.
Unlikely.
Yeah. I think that's pretty interesting. I think it does irk me at least a bit when people say, I don't play to win. Why are you playing?
Yeah.
I would prefer we all played to win.
Yes.
Group hug decks are the kind of decks that I'm not going to have it's not going to ruin my day when I play against them, but it definitely is something I want to know about ahead of time because it definitely changes like what kind of game we're playing.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I think if you just kind of like on turn 3, I realize you're playing group hug, that makes me a little salty.
Yeah, I think this is like, it's understandable why this person was banned. And I think that when people say, I don't play to win, that's already a red flag right there, you know? So,
yeah. And obviously what he was playing also just wasn't even group hug. There was so many layers to this. You know, the real culprit, I think, is the poster there because you're not supposed to look at your opponent's deck while they shuffle. That's not. Come on.
Wow, cheating.
Yeah. I think just people need to know like why he thought that was casual, I guess. Because I'm guessing if they said, why don't you go to an optimized pod, then he was in the absolute bottom, like most casual. I think the interesting is like, why do you think this is casual? What cards in this point to you as group hug, you know?
Yeah.
Like, what's your definition?
What I get to, the thing that like frustrated me, the triggering point for me in that story, assuming all the quotes are right, if you have Labman, Dasa, and Jace, and you go, I didn't expect this to happen, like, I want to hit you. Like, what are you? What?
Yeah.
Did you read them?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Why are you putting those cards in if you don't think you're going to get them
They
out?
just fell off a bookshelf and landed in the deck, and you're like, how did these get here?
Absolute nonsense. That's where you're like, I'm done.
And it tries to mitigate salt a lot by saying like no tutors, no fast mana, no combos, and then we also say what we're trying to win by. Usually, like turn 6 to 8. So I think that's pretty reasonable, and that's why we really hate that my deck's a 7. Don't worry about it. You know. So, but
sometimes we'll ask those more complicated questions because we don't do power level anymore, and we actually did a video where we just made fun of it. We said. It's
every deck's a 7
because a couple of years ago we did like, oh, how powerful is your deck? You know, we made a scale 1 to 10, and so this one was, well, how powerful is your deck? Assuming everybody says they're a 7, so the scale went from 7.1 to 7.9, and the tiers were just completely unhinged.
Yeah,
they were all insane, and you still had people like, you know, guys, I don't think this is a very good way to grade your deck's power.
Yeah, like they were like I said 7.2 is where all you play whatever you want, but all of your lands come in tapped.
Yeah, 7.3 is a precon, but you change exactly 1 card. So
and they were like, are you sure you should be using decimal points? I don't think this is a very consistent or good scale. And I'm like, oh yeah, because 7.8 means you have any deck you ever want, but Thassa's Oracle isn't in it. And one of the reasons being is because it's a mono green deck, and then 7.9 immediately is any deck you want, but Thassa's Oracle is in it. Like you think genuinely that's the play?
Yeah, but we've had people where we're like, you know, we don't play fast mana tutors combos. We're gonna go off, you know, my deck snowballs a little bit, turn 6 or 7, and then they're just like, yeah, my deck's a 7. It's like, so maybe just the lesson is rule 0 should be longer than like 1 or 2 sentences.
Yeah,
the longer it is, I think almost universally, the longer rule 0 has been, the more fun I have, or the more pleasant a game.
Yeah,
the more you can like really suss out what someone's doing.
Yeah, it can be 2 minutes. That's fine.
I think the term upgrade precon is a little bit misleading too.
I don't really like that term.
Because like upgrade precon can be a few things. Oh, I changed all of the tap lands to untapped lands, or, you know, shocks and fetches, whatever.
Or you like ship a Theseus to Negdir Markov and it's just like the best deck ever.
Yeah, we've had people who just, we played against someone pretty recently and they're like, oh, this is a casual deck. It was Onyxia, but the entire deck was basically a Sithis deck with a little bit of black in it, like a very finely tuned Sithis deck with Onyxia in it. So, you know?
Yeah, that is a really funny thing with the upgraded precon. Like you said, Beezy, like the ship of Theseus, it's like, okay, well, at what point does it stop becoming the precon, and is it now just something completely different? Because I think that point comes sooner than people think it does. You know?
Yeah, I think once you get to like 10 or 15, you're there. You're just like, that's a deck.
Yeah. It's a different deck
now
at that point.
Maybe it's not like, it's not an optimized deck or a highly tuned deck, but it's not a precon.
Yeah, I think it really depends. Like, are you switching out Utter End for Generous Gift or something? Like, maybe if you make a few swaps like that, it might not be too bad.
Yeah,
but
like
if you're
comparable swaps.
Yeah, or you just upgrade the mana base.
But if you're like, I'm taking out this crappy card that causes me to plane chase when we're not even using that, and I'm putting in doubling season, it's like, well,
it's like,
there's a bit of an upgrade there.
A little better.
Yeah.
That'd be a little different.
You took out a vanilla creature with melee. Okay.
I think that touches kind of on something in the post too, which is like the player is running all these crazy good cards, right? They're running like Sylvan Library, Gaia's Cradle. They're running like kind of the best cards that they can be finding. So to me, it strikes that like the player saying they're running casual stuff and not even optimized when they're running these like really good value cards, they might be thinking that that's like the play pattern. Like, okay, I'm playing casually. I'm not going to be super careful. I'm not going to go for wins aggressively or like kind of all the other stuff that you guys were just talking about kind of sucking too is like sandbagging things a little bit, playing in a way that's not trying to go for the win. And that isn't really what people should be doing, even in like the most casual level. It's not that the game goal is different. It's that like the path that you get there on is different, I think.
Yeah, like more like mindset versus deck construction or something.
Yeah, I think there's also cards in general that are like flags that people are like, oh, that's not casual. Obviously, Gaia's Cradle's one of them.
Yeah,
but I played against someone with my $20 deck, and they put down a mana crypt because, and I quote, I like mana rocks. And I got so angry.
And like you could have a $20 deck, swap one card and put a mana crypt in it. And, it's probably not going to make your deck that crazy more powerful, but it is like a signpost, like an indicator of this higher power level. So, those cards aren't necessarily inherently bad, but like it does indicate that that person isn't quite playing with the same tools that you're bringing to the sandbox,
Right.
Yeah, I felt betrayed almost.
And plus, like you don't know the rest of the deck. So even if they just swapped out Mana Crypt and like, but that's their first play, and it's like that's the only difference between that and a $20 deck. It's like I just don't trust that. Like
exactly. Yeah, exactly. There's nothing more suspicious than the turn one Mana Crypt.
It just doesn't make like it would make less sense. It's like you had a glitch for one card, and then you're just like, I'm a $20 deck. Oh, Mana Crypt.
Yeah.
Don't forget that.
Yeah. The thing in this post that like bugs me, and you guys kind of mentioned this, is there's a couple things. One is the group hug aspect and leaning on group hug as a strategy that is like purely, quote unquote casual. And I really don't think that there probably do exist like pure group hug decks that truly do not want to win the game. Those probably do exist. I don't want to play against them. I'm fine playing against group hug, but the thing that I don't like about it is that when the group hug player insists that they are just group hug and that they're not a threat, it's like group hug is a fine archetype. Like I get wanting to like make everybody a little bit more powerful, and then at a certain point like flip a switch and surge ahead because you've also been making yourself more powerful. Like that's kind of the crux of group hug deck.
Sure,
but to be like, I'm just this unassuming group hug deck, like, don't even worry about me. And that brings this other thing, which is like people hiding behind their deck power level in a way where they're like, well, I don't really know how good this deck is, or like, oh, it's just group hug. Like, oh, this never happens to me. Like, it couldn't possibly be a strong deck because it used this one strategy. It's like, that's not true at all. Like, it can definitely just still wreck face. An optimized group hug deck is going to crush a table of precons easily.
Yeah, you touched a good point. Like, I think the card I see a lot or I hear a lot in group hug that they win, it's like Approach the Second Sun, where it's like, eventually, their lands make triple mana or whatever, and then they're going to play that, and they're going to play Dig Through Time, and then they're going to play it again. It's like, that seems pretty valid. It's like the thing that I kind of like that irks me a little bit about group hug is that, especially group hug without a plan, because I think maybe if you frame it differently, like how you were saying, it's like, yeah, my deck introduces resources, kind of like a Nekusar. It's like, oh, I'll give everybody mana, but I can use it the most. Like your Lock of Scorched Thrash is kind of one like that. Maybe if it's just framed a little differently, that would annoy me less. But the people who just like, when you go Howling Mine and then like Rites of Flourishing and then like Font of Mythos or whatever that card's called, and it's like now everybody draws 6 cards. The reason that like I have to kill those cards immediately and I don't care what your defense is that if everybody draws 28 cards, my deck loses. Sorry, like, or I know that I don't have the best deck at the table. Like, that's just not good for me.
Yeah.
Whenever Mia plays, she has like a Nekusar type deck. Whenever she's played Howling Mine, immediately I just kill it. And like sometimes I kill it before I even get a card to save a mana. And she's like, why'd you do that? I'm like, why didn't I do it sooner?
Look, I know why he did it. I asked because the rest of the table goes, yeah,
Fall for that crap.
why did you do that?
Why did you hurt the Howling Mine?
Yeah, look, it
that's a
was
really
giving
good point.
everyone cards. But yeah, I do have a Nekuzar-esque deck. It is it does incorporate white though. So, I can windfall you into my Smothering Tithe or something.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Yeah.
I'm
but
happy
it's like
for you.
value at this point.
And like I don't think about that deck as group hug because you like
I don't say it's group hug ever.
Right, you don't say that. You punish it. And I've also seen a lot of people hide, maybe unintentionally hide, but they say like it's a joke, it's not serious, it's group hug. So like
It's jank.
there's some kind of implication. Don't target me. I'm memeing. It's like you're not memeing.
Yeah.
You're trying to win. If you have any card in that entire deck that can win the game ever, shut up. And if you don't, I really don't want to play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I will tell people I will draw you a bunch of cards and stuff, but like my goal is I Rise of the Dark Realms. I'm trying to get you to discard all your shit. I'm like, I've reached the multiverse. I'm trying to, I tax you for every card you draw. I get a treasure for every card you draw. I just put Shieldred in.
Yeah.
Like this is I am drawing you cards. I can draw you 10 a turn or something. However, you're hurting for
You don't
it.
That's
want
a lot of
one way or
shoulder
another.
damage.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't for free. I'm not here to just for fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a much better way of going about bringing those types of like group hug elements to a table is to be like what you said, Beezy. Like I have a deck that distributes resources. We're all going to get additional resources from the cards I play, but I'm probably going to make better use of them, and that's a good thing to be on the lookout for. Like if the group hug deck is drawing everyone 3 or 4 cards a turn, they have built their deck to use those 3 or 4 cards much better than I'm going to be able to use them in my weird like Mardu human deck.
Yeah, or sometimes they just try to deck you and it's like they play Force Fruition or something. And it's like, well, you can't help but die. And like, who cares if you have 80 cards? You can't use them.
I'm running Force Fruition, and also it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, it's not group hug. Beezy called my deck group slug, and it is true.
Yeah, I think maybe that's where it comes from for me in group hug. It's just like the tee-hee, ooh, let's all get some cards. It's like, I guess
I'm not doing anything bad, and you're like,
don't you want cards? It's like whatever.
I'll say that, but also I'll have like Satan Raveler and Shieldred out. It's like, all right, take 3. Take 3 for every card you draw.
Tony has a couple group hug-ish
Like
decks.
Xyrus.
Yeah, he's got a Xyrus deck, and he's got his Yearlock deck, which is more group slug, but it does like increase mana production. And he'll say that stuff. He'll be like, come on, I'm trying to help you out. But he does it jokingly, knowing that we know his deck inside and out.
Yeah.
That's how we do it too.
Yeah.
But the people who say that stuff earnestly, it's like, come on, you're not fooling anybody, dude. Like, give me a fucking
Some
break.
people do get fooled.
Yeah, some people do.
I'll say as a joke, I'll be like, why'd you kill my butt cheek boy, Tommy of the Crescent Moon? And he'll be like, he needed to die.
And someone will be like, yeah, why did you kill him? Like a bully in like a high school movie. Like, yeah.
Yeah, why'd you shove butt cheek boy into a locker?
That's not exactly what I was going for, but all right.
Cheek boy.
I love it. One other thing I want to call out in this post is, like, I appreciate when LGSs try to sort power levels and sort people into pods based on power levels, but it is a challenging thing. Granted, I think this salty player, this person who's doing the group hug thing, isn't coming at this in good faith. I think they are trying to be misleading, trying to pub stomp a little bit, just trying to get some wins and be a jerk about it. But even when people are coming at that stuff like pretty genuinely, it is hard to balance your power levels, because what's the difference between casual and optimized? Even competitive gets a little bit muddy around like the fringes of it, but people do have a better idea of that. But like casual and optimized are challenging terms. Like what we were talking about with precon upgrading. It's like, when does your precon go from casual to optimized? How many card swaps does it take? It's not like there's this fixed formula. And even then, your deck can just outperform just through sheer variance. If you get like your turn 1 Soul Ring and like ramp really hard, well, now your deck that you thought was a power level 5 is looking like a pretty good 8 or 7.5 to 7.8 or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. So I think those things are very challenging, and good on this LGS for, based on what the post said, it sounds like people make a really good effort to stay within those lanes. But I think that's just a hard thing in general, and you're bound to have people who accidentally go into the wrong group and it gets a little bit messed up and you have some bad games.
Yeah, I think your indicator too for this player kind of operating in bad faith, which you mentioned, Sam, is like them looking like trying to sneak a peek at a top card of a library. Like,
I forgot about that.
Let's not forget that. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's weird. Like I think everyone has that temptation. Like, oh, I just wonder what's up there, but you don't do that. You just don't do that. It's like, and that's where I was like, oh, they're casual. They're treating the game like it doesn't matter, not they're building their deck to be a little more slow paced.
Yeah.
I did play at an LGS that used that, like, oh, let's try to group you guys. Even then, like, I had one time where I brought a pretty casual deck. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of janky. And then, like, I was the dude who just, like, destroyed, because the people I was playing with were, like, playing with, like, cards they had. Like,
Like a stack of cards
Like,
that just happened to
you
be
give somebody,
green.
like, a 3K box of whatever from, like, Amazon. And, like, that was the deck. And I was like,
a power level 1 EDH.
right. It really,
deck.
it was like a 1 or a 2. And I was like, these don't, it starts at 4. Like, and I was just like, oh, geez, guys, sorry. I'm playing, like, mediocre beats, and I'm like attacking for 7 in the air, and I'm feeling like, oh my god,
Like,
Yeah,
holy
Beezy
shit,
over
a
here pub
flyer?
stomping because he has an actual curve when their decks don't start till CMC 5. Like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, like it was, you know what it was? This will be the perfect example. I milled a guy for 3, and he was like, oh, geez.
Oh no.
There's my 7 drop in there. I'm like, uh-oh. I knew from there, I was like, this is not going to go how I thought it would.
It's so good. I only hear myths of the power level 1 and 2 players. I definitely had like a power level 1 or 2 deck when I first started playing EDH, but like I just have never encountered it. It has been so long since I've ever found it.
In a way, it was refreshing. I was like, wow, this is
still
the
exists.
pure magic that I could never recapture. Like they
I
have
heard
it.
stories about you.
Yeah. I was you when I was 12. I can never be you again.
Let me show you about Kaleidostone.
Let me show you this card called Kaleidostone. Let me tell you what's up. Llanowar Elf is more busted than you thought.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good.
Well, what do we think the salt ratings are on this story?
I think this is 1 cubic foot of salt. I'd be pretty angry if this happened to me.
Yeah.
I would say this is like, like a phone case full of salt. Like it's definitely tangibly annoying, but I am glad that the LGS, like after seeing the resolution of like the LGS, like this guy wasn't allowed at the event.
Yeah.
I have to reduce my salt a little bit. But like,
Yeah,
the guy,
I'm happy there's a
shame
resolution.
on you, guy, who did that. Who was just like being a spike for no reason. But
Annoying.
at least the outcome was okay.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's like going and ordering fries from a restaurant and they're a little too salty. And then you go back and you try them again and they're still kind of too salty. But then you go back that third time and the restaurant was like, yo, our bad.
Yeah,
like,
we got
fixed
you.
it. They're
This is
good
the
now,
hottest,
I
crispiest
promise.
fries.
Yeah, the happy ending does help.
Or they gave you a large when you ordered a medium.
I agree with all that. I think that this is a pretty salty situation. I definitely, over half a shaker for me if I had to go through with this stuff. But the fact that the LGS came in and really, just showed that they like care about these power levels and care about their environment, that's awesome. I mean, you don't see that. Well, you do see that often, which is good. But there are definitely LGSs that don't do that. So
How about another one, Sam?
let's do another one. Let's do that long one.
I'm ready.
Hell yeah. I'm ready. I'm buckled up.
The long ones have to be read at some point. That's the thing. Like if I save them all, then we're going to have one episode where it's just
10
like,
hours.
yeah, it's just way too long.
That would be
so.
hilarious.
Christmas
Just
special.
an episode where you only read posts. We
single-
don't even talk about them.
Can't even
you
evaluate.
only read all of the long posts.
Sam is just a narrator for a full
Yeah.
episode.
That would be so exhausting.
It all started when I was 7.
All right. Well, let's get into another one here. We got one from our buddy Reed, and this is another submission through our lovely website.
Reed Duke submitting
Yeah,
posts
Reed
to
Duke.
our
Hear him out.
Reed
Hear him out.
Duke, the forlorn member of the Dookie Boys, the third member of the Dookie Boys with me and Alan from Mental Misplay, Reed Duke. If he ever listens to this podcast, he'll hear the little inside joke we've had for a while.
that he is unknowingly a part of.
The Dookie Boys.
That's good.
And the story goes, hi, Salty Crew. I'm dealing with an issue where my brother-in-law, Pete, seems to target me and make sure that I don't have a chance of winning, but incidentally king makes other players at the table by doing so, which is making me a bit salty. My pod has 4 members, Pete, Mark, Steve, and me. I feel like we can spice up these names.
Yeah, we got Pete Davidson,
Pete Davidson, cool.
Mark Wahlberg.
Mark Wahlberg, nice. And Steve Jobs. Did you guys know that Steve Jobs died of ligma?
Who's Steve Jobs?
Ligma balls.
We have referenced that way too many times recently, and I've loved it every time.
It's so good.
It's yeah, like all the time I'm thinking about
Who the
that.
hell is Steve Jobs?
We'll enact it with nobody else here. I'll be like, I'll do the voice. I'm like, who the hell is Steve Jobs?
Ligma balls.
Yeah, you'll hear from the other room, Ligma balls.
Oh, so good. All right, so let's hear about these characters. Pete Davidson builds his decks to have a ton of value, but sometimes loses sight of a win con. He consistently has the most card draw and loves his tokens. Mark Wahlberg builds his decks with low removal and low protection, and instead uses all of those slots to make way for some crazy game-ending nuke and high synergies. He's usually the biggest threat at the table, and we save some removal to prevent that from happening in most games. Despite being targeted a majority of the time, he's never salty. Steve Jobs is the least experienced deck builder and player, but occasionally builds some of the most overpowered commanders, such as Teza Karlov and Niv Mizzet Perun, which you can't really build incorrectly. I bet you could, but it's good that Steve Jobs isn't. I would say that I'm the most consistent deck builder. Well, that makes sense, Reed Duke. You're a very accomplished and decorated Magic player, which doesn't necessarily mean that I build the best decks. I have played the most games outside of our pod via the LGS and on spelltable, which caused me to tune my decks and have a better balance of ramp, protection, interaction, and finishers, which ultimately helps me squeeze out a few close wins here and there. I purposefully don't run infinite combos, fast mana, or many tutors, just because I prefer a bit more RNG.
What a guy.
I started tracking all of our games in our pod and shared the stats with the others because I like stats and I wanted everyone to be certain how people are performing. Steve Jobs is the most winningest person in the pod, partly from the commanders he chooses and the fact that we all seem to focus our removal on Mark's crazy decks before dealing with Steve. I'm now the second most winningest player in the pod. All right, that's the background. The story goes, I won the first game of the night running my new Afara God of the Polis Blink deck. For most of the game, we were all trying to figure out how to deal with Mark's Earl the Miststalker Voltron deck. I luckily had Elishnorn, Mother of the Machines, and was able to blink Rishadan Footpad a few times to keep threats off the board. I occasionally chose not to blink Rishadan Footpad because I didn't want to completely run Pete and Steve's entire games when it came down to them having to sacrifice lands. I eventually was able to take Mark out via combat damage and then deal with the other two players for the win. In the next game, I power down and hop on my upgraded Urza Chief Artificer Precon deck. How upgraded is it? Read.
A separate podcast.
You gotta let us know.
Steve is playing Teza Karlov, Pete is playing Sephrus of the Hidden Ways, and Mark is playing Mahadi Emporium Master. I am mana screwed on Urza, somehow only having 2 lands on turn 7. Ugh, that sucks.
Oof.
The previous game I played with this deck, I was mana flooded. At this point, I was already pretty salty at myself and RNG of not drawing lands. The Teza Karlov board state is getting out of hand and has a Liliana Dreadhorde general on the battlefield. Pete plays a board wipe, sacrificing one of his creatures to Yeheni Undying Partisan to give him indestructible. Yeheni gets 13 +1/+1 counters, and the Liliana is wide open. Pete enters combat and swings Yeheni at me, the mana screwed Urza Precon. I point out that I only have 2 lands, and there's a Liliana Dreadhorde general on the battlefield, and he says, you've been mana screwed and won before, which I haven't, and doesn't change his attacks, so I take 15 damage. The turn gets around to Steve, and he ends up drawing enough cards via Liliana and sacrifices enough creatures to drain the board with Teza and win. In the next game, I play my weakest deck, Baloth Baratil the Entertainer, and a Raised by Giants background combo, because I still feel like Afara, God of the Polis, win was a bit oppressive, and I didn't want to bounce back from a bad loss with another strong deck. Fast forward into the game a bit, I have Baloth, Raised by Giants, and Atali, Primal Conqueror on the battlefield. Pete plays Bloodthirsty Blade and attaches it to Mark's Frodo, Sauron's Bane. At this point, Mark has to swing Frodo at Steve on his turn due to the double goad, because Baloth goads as well. However, during Pete's second main phase, he uses Anguished Unmaking at sorcery speed on Raised by Giants. I call him out and tell him that's a straight up bad play, and explain that the sorcery speed and targeting an enchantment that is not currently threatening him, and I still have a blocker for Frodo. So even if the goal was to remove the goad so the Frodo player could potentially take me out, they'll probably still attack the other player. This is the second time that Pete has used Anguish Unmaking at sorcery speed on one of my unthreatening permanents in the last 2 weeks. I told him that it's okay to use Anguished Unmaking on Raised by Giants, but that his timing of when to use it is critical. Out of Salt-induced spite, I transformed my Atali Primal Conqueror next turn and swung at him for lethal infect damage.
Oh boy. If only he had an anguished unmaking in hand.
Funny enough, Steve, the person who Frodo would have been forced to attack, ended up winning the game. Why did he not choose Itali for the anguished unmaking? I do not know. So I'm getting a bit salty because 1, I can't stand bad threat assessment and bad spell timing. 2, I feel like preventing me from having a chance at winning was more important to them than actually trying to win the game themselves. And 3, the previous games with different decks were influencing actions taken in the current game. Stay salty, Reed Duke.
Interesting.
That was a long one, Reed, but we appreciate the details. Yeah, that was a saga.
Yeah, it's really good that we got all of those details. I feel pretty bad considering it's like, I think you need to have a talk with that friend about like, why do you think that I'm the threat in this situation? Like away from the game, because I feel like there are times we've all done stuff out of spite in a game. It's like, oh, you destroyed my thing, I'll destroy your thing. Mm-hmm. We've had that. So
have we?
I've personally never done that, but I've heard stories though.
Personally, never. Of course not.
Yeah, I've personally never sacrificed an entire board of tokens in order to try and get a Glimmer Baron to fight something. That's definitely never happened.
But I do think that person needs to sit down with their friend and be like, look, like I appreciate you seeing me as a threat and that like, you respect my play style, but it's also that if this is the game, like maybe you should use your removal here. Like, what am I doing to maybe make you salty? Because like also this makes me salty, just open communication, I guess, would be the best option. Especially if they're gonna be playing against each other a lot more in the future.
Yeah, there's a couple things at the end when I think they summed up really well when they were like, hey guys, like past actions from past games are influencing this game, and it really feels like you just want me to lose more than you want to win.
Yeah,
and that's good. But I think the poster might be on a little bit of like a slippery slope as well, where it's like, I think getting salty at someone for making a play that you would never make is just a bad move in general. Of like, you have to allow people to make bad plays. Like if someone's trying to make the best play and they make a play that like is somehow objectively terrible, I can't be mad at them. I just don't think that's a tenable like position to take, because then you're just policing someone's like ability to make a move, and it's like, how fast can they make the move? What would you do? Do they have to consult you to like not make you salty? It's like, I'm not saying they were doing that.
Yeah.
It's just like given 2 options and they pick the worst option. I don't get mad at that anymore.
Yeah, I also think Magic is such a game of like hiding information and stuff that something that might look bad to you doesn't always mean it's the worst play.
Yeah,
we talked about this a lot. It's like when someone's going to win the game, you have to use a counter spell. But like if someone tutored for their win and they're going next and they're gonna win, it's like, should you try and make someone else use the removal? Should you save it? It's like we don't know enough, because we don't have perfect information. So I think getting mad at someone for making a move that you wouldn't do when you don't have full information is kind of shitty.
Yeah, usually that's just not the move, I think.
I struggled with this one a lot because plays that I perceive as bad is definitely one of my hugest pet peeves. The question for me is always why? Like, why are you doing that? And I do actually think that's a pretty decent way of framing it in a post-game conversation.
Yeah.
Like after the game, you can ask why. It puts it on them, because if they say, I don't like you winning, you're like, what the fuck? That's not the point, man. Try to win yourself, Oh,
I figured out what's wrong. You have no idea what
yeah. If they say, oh, I forgot it was instant speed, I thought the Raised by Giants was a threat for some reason. Like if they have reasoning, then you can have more of a dialogue about it instead of it just being like,
you kind of have to drop it after that.
Yeah, exactly.
But like I did have one game where, I had like just exactly what you said, Mike. Like I was attacking a player for lethal to take them out of the game because I thought they had a really crazy board. They had, I think it was like rough triplets, and they were all 12/12s with trample or something. And they had like 4 of them. And I was like, all right, oh my God, a sick top deck. I can kill this one player with, it was a limited, it was a Commander Seal. It was like a volcanic dragon. It was a 4/4 flyer with haste for 6. And I was like, oh my God, all right, like I'm going to attack you. And I sent it over, and the player to my right, the other guy was like, no. And then he killed it. But like the rest of the table was dead on board to Gruff Triplets guy. And I was just kind of like, there was no way. I'm like, I can't rationalize that. It just felt like you had to have wanted me to lose. I don't understand.
Yeah. We call that the YouTuber tax sometimes.
Yeah, because I wasn't winning. It's like I found a way to kill them. And it was like, I was like racking my brain. I'm like, maybe it was because he died.
I've definitely used this at conventions before I was on the channel. We've been playing a game. together, and someone was like, "Well, I could kill
It's like, I can
Beezy,"
kill one person right now.
and I was like, "Did you want to say that you killed a YouTuber?"
This was before.
The Nitpicking Nerds.
They were like, yeah, take it at home with me.
with threats in hand, going, "Yeah, kill Beezy."
That's why I recruited her. I'm like, no more. Now you're a YouTuber.
Yeah.
I think you don't want them targeting you just because they want you to lose. But he did also say that he was the second most winningest person in the pod.
Yep.
I think there's a little bit of difference though. Like I generally know if we're playing with a pod, I know who brings the strongest decks, or if we're playing with decks I've seen a million times, I know which deck is the best deck. So tiebreaker, all else equal, I'll attack the person I think has a combo in the deck or can win the most. And that might look unfair at the time. Or, like Joe actually had this Maelstrom Wander deck, and it was just all like 7 drops. So the first couple of turns, they never look like a threat. But the right way to play against that deck so you don't lose every time was to just beat the crap out of them on turns 1 through 6.
Pressure
And
early.
it looks bad, but it's like that's what you have to do sometimes. And I don't think Steve Jobs or whoever is the Reed Duke. Sorry, I don't think Reed Duke is at that point yet. But there might be a little bit of that where, like, if they think he always wins, sometimes he's going to get unlawfully targeted.
Yeah.
But I still think he's overall the victim if people are saying, I just don't want you to win the game.
Yeah. I think it's hard to parse out like the salt with the advice in this one, because I think the advice on like the proper timing for casting Anguished Unmaking does come from like a really good space of like wanting to help your friend and wanting them to know like, hey, these decision points come at like critical moments. And that's like the power of instant speed magic. Trying to impart that knowledge to a friend in a moment when you're really salty is like hard to do. And I don't think it's going to be received, even if it comes from a good place.
Yeah.
When this happens to me, I often will say like, I don't think that's a good play. And I want to talk about it at the end of the game.
Yeah.
Because then I can cool down a bit, and then I can get the understanding of like,
why?
What was the rest of the information there? Did you have another removal spell in your hand that I didn't see that was going to let that Frodo Sauron's Bane get through on the other player?
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. I think in the moment, like in the game, what you do is politic. You say, are you sure? Like you could target that. It's better.
Yeah.
And then after the game is the moment you can say, look, I have literally no agenda. We're after the game. I'm not worried about winning anymore. The game is over. But I think your chance of winning goes up if you hold that piece of interaction to the right timing.
Right.
I think Magic's tough in that scenario because we are playing against it's 4-person game. It's not as easy as 1v1 where it's like, I have to kill this person. Like, for instance, when all else fails, if I have something on board and I can ping someone for 2 damage immediately, it's probably going to be Beezy if I don't know the other 2 people, because it's more of like an I know Beezy. It's like, and your first attack usually will be me if you don't know the
all
other
else equal.
people. Because it's like, not only do we know each other's decks, we know we won't hold it against each other for 2-3 damage.
Yeah.
It was interesting that he brought up the like Liliana versus deal 15 to me play. That's an interesting play. Like, to me, I don't even think, like if I'm putting myself in whoever attacked, the person with Yahenni, I'm putting myself in their shoes. If I really think that Reed Duke has like that big of a chance to win, I'm like he always wins. Or like it's in my head that he's like this one of the best players or the best player at the pod. I don't think it's that crazy to attack him for 15 instead of, take a Liliana down. It's funny because it's almost like the worst for Reed Duke. It was like the worst possible follow-up to like prove what he was already thinking. That they just happened to like combo off and win when that didn't seem like from an empty board. It doesn't really seem that likely. Maybe the board was a little bit more complicated, but it was empty, presumably. And it just seems like it might just speak more to how much they think of you, or like how much they think of a threat you are versus like how much they just want you dead because it's funny.
Yeah. There is also like a resource thing where when you have a creature that big, like a creature with 15 power, and I attack a planeswalker that has 5 loyalty, to me that feels like a waste. Like I want that 15 power that I just got to do the most work for me. And usually that's like player damage, That's
a mistake people have made too.
Definitely.
I have a 10/10. I don't want to kill this planeswalker.
Yeah.
A lot of times that can be a mistake. But even then, if it's just a simple mistake, that's not them hating you.
Yeah, you can't hold a mistake against someone.
Yeah, Lily's pretty strong anyways to begin with, but I think when all else fails, if their answer is we just want to see you dead, then you just have to find new
that's the problem
to play with. I mean, in my recent play group, I've had 2 players who have completely fundamentally different play styles. They've been friends for years and they're still friends, but they just agree not to play with each other anymore.
One's like Mega Spike and the other one is like, I just want to sit down for an hour and have fun.
Yeah.
It's just 2 different decks you're building, right? one wins by accident sometimes. He goes, I don't like winning, but this deck likes winning. When we asked him to build something a little bit spikier than like dirtling.
Like Elvish Visionary type replacements. I love draw a card, lose a life.
He's a big Orzhov fan of like Luris of like, all right, come back, come down, come back. Like,
then he always misses the like, where's the drain? I don't know.
I wasn't feeling like it.
I'm
Just
just
like the
I'm
slow
just
value.
doing the back and forth. I'm not doing the benefit part from that.
They're in there. There's just never enough of them.
Yeah.
Well, what do you guys think the overall salt rating for this post is?
I think you have potential for a very high salt rating after you have this very necessary conversation. But right now, I wouldn't say it's that high for me. Maybe, let's see, maybe like a tablespoon of salt.
I was like, yeah, maybe a McDonald's fry of salt. Like, I think it can get really, really salty, but right now it's
We
like,
might have a problem, but with those two plays, I don't know.
I'm not this person. I haven't seen enough.
I think the salt is fresh on this one. I don't think it's a lot of salt, but you can still taste it. You know, Reed still has that taste in his mouth. And I think like the more you think about this situation and the play that happened, like we said, some of those tools are like trying to take that analysis of that move and bring it to the end of the game when there's no stakes anymore. You've cooled down from your salt a little bit and you can have a better conversation about that. I think that's going to be really helpful for your play group. But anytime there's like play group challenges and stuff, it's always going to be a little bit salty because, you know, if this is enough where you feel like I need outside advice with this situation, then, you know, there's going to be some salt there. And it's always tough to see that. And that stuff can be challenging to navigate too.
Yeah, I think actually playing with the same four people over and over might be one of the biggest salt factors. Like, because me and Joe used to play every game together and we would actually start to just get like sick of playing together, like where we couldn't play together. But it wasn't that we like were mad at each other or anything. It ended up being that we just knew the exact workings of every single card in every single deck. So I know that's like when they go this into this, that's a huge problem. And when no one else respects that because they're like, I don't even know you guys, I just want to play a game of Commander, we would just end up like resenting it and it would just start getting annoying. And then when we played less often, we had way more fun together when we did play.
Yeah. We
like,
get that
I don't know.
I
don't know if you could just add people into the playgroup, but like that's definitely a real thing of like
diversifying
familiarity fatigue.
I definitely think that playing with a big group of friends and just having that ability to change pods does help so much.
Yeah. I mean, we play like the core four, me, Mike, Tony, and our friend Nick. We used to play every single week. We don't as much now just because we're, you know, it's been a busy couple months.
But it never happens.
But there are some times where we play and we're salty like from the mulligan, you know, but part of it is that we're just such good friends and we love to push each other's buttons and we know perfectly how to do that. So like we find that our casual games have become more salty over time, and then we need to play CDH as like a palate cleanser because it's so low salt for us.
That's totally fair. I remember there was a time that I kind of realized this. Joe played a Sky Shroud claim and I'm like, that's it. Every time I ask myself, how did I lose? It's because they played Sky Shroud claim. So I played Shadow of Doubt in response. And that when they got like super aggravated at that, I'm like, figured it out. Wait a second. Maybe we just played too much Commander together.
I think if you're putting answers into your deck to directly counter someone else's deck, I think that's the point where you need to
definitely
kind of reevaluate what you're doing.
Yeah, that is good wisdom. If you're hard teching against someone else's build, you're too deep. You're too deep on it.
It's like we are too deep.
Yeah, I think for this is like kind of low salt. I think, you know, having a play group that is repeatedly doing it, I can tell it's just kind of building up. You know, we've talked about the strategies of when to talk, when to give advice, when to do some politics, like when to let things kind of get to you a little bit. I do think that some of the work here is just our poster here. I think it's Reed. If you know you're the second most winningest player, sometimes it's fine to take the L. Like sometimes you're going to get poorly targeted. The threat assessment's going to be wrong. You're going to lose something and you're going to lose the game. Like I'm our losingest player in our casual games and it's 50% because I kind of don't give a shit. Like I'm going to lose the game and that's probably going to be okay. And it's not going to hit me too much. And then I'll be a little salty baby in the corner about it. But no, like if the stats are showing you're doing fine and you're on a deck that you deliberately chose as not your strongest deck to like have this more even experience, like it is okay for you to lose in some of those games, even if it feels frustrating or feels unfair. Like sometimes you do just have to take the loss.
I think that's really good advice. I've had that's my experience in Commander draft. We used to get together every week or for a regular draft, and I was like one of the most winningest players in that group, if not like the most by whatever. Everybody knew it. We're like, oh, Beezy was like he's gonna win this.
Humble brag.
Yeah, whatever. But then like when we got to Commander drafts, my win rate was abysmal,
Yeah.
and I was like, back in my head, I'm like it's a little annoying in the moment, but I'm like I can't really fault it. It's like all else equal, they just would slap me.
Yeah.
Or it's a tough choice, they would slap me. I'm like, I just think that's like the exact scenario where it's like, what a nice problem to have, right?
I mean, I also think that we're playing Commander. We're playing 4-player games. 1 in 4 chance that you're going to win just by chance in general. That's if you're going to, pick 1 out of 4, you're going to lose.
Yeah, you're losing the majority of the time.
Yeah, so I think that unless you're pub stomping or you're actively being dishonest, you have to know that you're going to lose a majority of the time.
Yeah, check the win rate, I guess. If you have the win rate of everybody, are they all close to 25 or is it like,
Yeah, and you have to go into that knowing that like you are going to lose most of the time because it's Commander, because you have 3 other opponents,
Exactly.
Well, should we move on to another one?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's jump to our third and final story here. Why don't we? Got a little short one here to finish it off. This one comes to us from our buddy Cameron, aka Aegis001. And this is a Gmail submission. And the title of this post is Salty Spelltable Rando, Unsurprising. Sounds about right.
should we just talk about how we feel now? Or?
Yeah, so salt ratings?
Yeah, right. And the post goes, hey, Foreman, Cameron, aka Aegis001 here. This is an older salty story, but I had to submit it. I was playing my first game ever on Spelltable and got matched with a Tasigur player, an Estrid player, and an Imhotep player. I was on Wrath, Weatherlight, Stalwart. Love that deck. Before the game, the Estrid player says, this is probably my best deck. If I get going, basically nobody is going to be able to stop me. Estrid starts the game with an off-camera shuffle, a draw 7, and a keep. After hearing what he said, I mulligan to find a counterspell, and I succeed. Estrid goes first. Brace yourself for these turns. Estrid on turn 0 plays a Ley Line of Anticipation. Okay. On turn 1, they play land, Soul Ring into Arcane Signet. On turn 2, they play land, Bloom Tender, Avacyn's Pilgrim, and Birds of Paradise. And at this point, I am suspicious. On turn 3, they play another land, and they cast Estrid. So a very quick start. So when Estrid is cast, I hit it with an Arcane Denial. The guy does a weird voice and says, Arcane Denial. I counter it with my own Arcane Denial. Now I am very suspicious that he had the ability to pull out this much mana by turn 3, play his commander, and have protective interaction that draws a card. The Tasigur player pipes up and hits Estrid with a Force of Negation.
Hell yeah.
The Estrid player absolutely loses it, starts actually yelling about how he can't compete with free counter spells and that we should have revealed that we were playing free counter magic in Rule 0, which, remember, consisted of him proclaiming that his deck was unbeatable. He says he can't recover from this setback and that he's already out of the game. The Tasigur player tries to remedy the situation by offering to hit his Arcane Denial instead of Estrid so that he can get an extra draw off of my Arcane Denial, and the Estrid player's screen just goes black. We played a good game and Imhotep won, but I can't help but wonder how someone could be so mad about a counterspell when the deck was probably stacked in their favor. Mm-hmm. Stay salty, Cameron, Aegis001. And they gave us their RAF deck list as well.
Notably, RAF is a 1-cent commander. So
yeah, that's the one that we talked about at the top of the episode.
It's a good couple.
Okay, so Beezy and I have this thing where we say if you need to cheat in casual commander, like what are you doing basically? Why like there's no stakes. And what the fuck is this person doing?
I feel that way about every game. I think if you need to cheat in any game, what the fuck? Why are you playing a game? Do something else.
Just play a game where you control everything, where there's not even any rules. Yeah. Just go like play in a sandbox or something.
Yeah, but especially when there's no stakes, It's like, what do you get if you win? A little tingly feeling? Like,
big tingles.
Find your dopamine not at 3 other people's expense. Like, it's very possible to do.
I mean, somebody cheating on Spelltable, honestly, doesn't surprise me. Like we kind of said,
completely obnoxious human.
Yeah. Spelltable is like the Wild West and also the sewer.
I think for me, this is a low salt score.
Well, I mean, I'd be salty in the moment because it's like, why do I have to get paired up with that? But then as long as I had a good game with the rest of the people, I wouldn't be so salty. But it's like, why do you have to do that, you know?
To me, it gets way more awkward and uncomfortable when there's a crybaby or someone freaking out in person. Because it's like, well, I don't know where this is going to escalate or what's going to happen. But if the worst thing that can happen is they shut off their webcam, it's like, all right, bye.
Yeah. It's almost worse if they stay. Like at least they left. You know, you can just fill
Yeah.
that with a fourth person, kick off another game.
I want to be a baby more. I'm gonna stay
They
here
just
and
keep
pester
talking, and
you.
you're like, oh god, can I mute you?
One thing Aegis001 did ask here is like, how does someone stack their deck and then get this salty? It is exactly because they stacked their deck and still couldn't win that they got so salty.
Yeah.
That's like,
It's evidence.
it
Yeah.
is additional evidence. You're so right that they stacked their deck because that's the level of upset that they are. They were like, this is the
That's- yeah.
perfect thing. There's no way I lose.
Like, and if this can't win,
yeah.
like what do I can't even cheat harder than this. That means I'm never gonna win.
It's
Yeah.
also really funny because like they have so much mana that they're not out of the game. You could just cast Estrid again next turn,
Yeah.
probably, and like you're getting the extra draw, and like you could just very easily continue to play, and like a turn for Estrid also really good.
And to me, just as like inexperienced, toxic, like it just like
Piece
Yeah.
of shit.
it just racks up more adjectives to this person that are not favorable. Like me, I just
Yeah, like
I'm not allowed to say the stuff on NN, so I have to get it all out.
Let it all
I'm not
out.
allowed to say the D word when I pull out the Shadow the Hedgehog plush.
Damn.
So-
I think I'm just like 98% terminally locked into PG-13 mode, whether I want to or not.
well, I'm the opposite way. I have a really hard time not just like cussing a shit ton on other people's
Oh,
streams.
nuts.
Fuck.
Yeah. We were on a stream one time and the person kicking it, I forgot who it was. We were like, can we swear? And they're like, yeah, you can. Just like, don't really say the F word because YouTube doesn't love that. And we were like getting ready and I was like, all right, I got a good fucking hand right here. And they were like, I just started streaming. And I was like,
And,
oh,
like, for no
sorry.
reason.
It was literally like the first
Yeah, you
word.
gotta use the F bomb like wisely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Sam just fires it off 3 seconds. You know,
Yeah.
I completely understand that because every single time we have to cut and I say something, I like flub up a line, I go like fuck. And it's like it's good insurance that I know that the editor won't put it in, but also it's like
Yeah.
okay, well there's no recovering this one. Just gotta do it
Yeah.
over.
Yeah. Like any chance of that being usable is now ruined. And she does like a weird, like an old hermit would. She's like, and the next guy's she just evolved into like she says frog.
I will say I love a story where there is somebody doing something shady and the pod teams up and like just
That's good.
fucking
Yes.
like blast their
It's
shit.
justice.
Yeah,
Because
it's
like,
like
a random nerd can't beat 3 other random nerds, right? Like it's just
Yeah.
like as soon as you team up, it's over for them. They have no leverage.
it's
true.
so good. Oh gosh. But yeah, I mean, you know, whiny baby's gonna whine. Like it's just how it is sometimes.
Should we do assault rating for this one?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. I think this one, for me, I mean, it's pretty low salt. It sounds like you had a shitty cheater on spelltable, which like surprise, right? And it was nipped in the bud very quickly. And hey, you guys had the counter spells in hand, like, and then they left immediately, like you were saying, Beezy. Like the best thing about this is that they were gone almost immediately.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
I'd say this is a low lingering salt ring. And when I see cheating, I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And then like after it's like, okay, it's gone. Cool.
Yeah, I think the hindsight really helps us be less salty because if they
Mhm.
would have just won the game and dominated with their stupid crafted hand, it's like I wasted an hour of my life. But I think we do have hindsight to thank for this, and knowing that they were cheating and got demolished makes it
Easier.
less salty.
Yeah, this is like a secret sugar break here. Like the story is worth it. And I hope that there was an enjoyable game as a follow up for this, either picking up a fourth player or just playing it out with the 3 people. At least you know that the player that Force of Negation is like on the level. You're like, okay, this vibe
This guy
check
gets it.
passed officially.
Well, and also like now that person, their foolishness gets to be like it's so amplified. How many
Yeah.
people get to hear it now? It's like,
Yeah.
oops, shouldn't have done that, I guess. You're gonna learn today. The person's gonna be like, oh my god, that was me.
Cringe.
I'm sorry, guys.
Love it. Well, Mike, I think it might be that time of the week.
I've been waiting. What time of the week, Sam?
It's the time of the week that comes every week. It's the time of the week where we say, Mike,
Don't make me do it.
you have to do it.
Don't make me do it.
You have to do it.
Mike.
What's the salty card of the week?
Well, thanks, Sam. The salty card of the week this
'Cause
week.
it's just salt. Everyone else is just at fault. Is it my destiny to live and die a life of deck fragility? 'Cause it's just salt. Where they see fun, I see assault. What will it take for them to see I need to win this game and every game? And that is I'm Just Ken from the Barbie movie. I think it was written by Ryan Gosling, or at the very least performed by Ryan Gosling. And that was a salty song request from Accidental TPK, who was kind enough to provide us with lyrics as well.
That's
Thanks
good.
to
Thank you.
Ray.
That was wonderful. We really enjoyed that.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I'm glad you liked it.
Thank you, Accidental
I
TPK.
think you added a lot to it, Sam.
Well, the salty card of the week this week is Cataclysm.
Hmm.
It is 2 and 2 white for a sorcery. Each player chooses from the permanents he or she controls an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a land, and sacrifices the rest. So, Mia and Beezy, would this card make you salty?
I think it's another one of those cards that if I see it without foreknowledge of it, I would be a little bit like, Well, and then I would probably get a little salty. I knowing the no holds barred, or my deck can't possibly lose. That might change my perception a little bit. It's not a card I've ever considered putting into a deck. I guess we can put it there.
I think it really depends on the deck because I run Armageddon and Ravages of War, my CEDH Kalia, so that's very no holds barred. And if you have a follow up, you're going to win the next turn or something, like, or you have something and you're like, oh, I'm swinging in for lethal on everyone, then maybe it makes sense. But I really hate when mass land destruction is a thing and there's no follow up. It's like, what are you going to do now? Oh, I don't know. Like, rebuild, I guess. Like,
it's hard to win after this one, right? I mean, people might keep creatures. They're all going to keep a land. So, this could very well, the game could go for like 4 or 5 more turns. You can't, maybe if you have like 6 planeswalkers out, but at that point we're done anyway.
That is the interesting thing. It does not hit planeswalkers, and it doesn't hit battles.
Battles are safe.
Yeah, so your battles are safe. So it does, you can break parity on it in a weird Super Friends deck where you're running it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
How does this one make you feel, Sam?
Yeah, I agree with what you guys are saying. I mean, this is kind of your classic situation with land destruction or those super board wipes that are hitting like land and multiple permanent types. It probably has a home in very specific decks, like you mentioned, like a Super Friends deck might want this. Or if you have some kind of way to break parity on it, like cast it and put a Teferi's Protection out, or some kind of effect that gets you some value back, like Brought Back or some of those other white spells that you can kind of stack on top of this or cast afterwards to break parity. But generally speaking, I think these effects are kind of a bummer, usually just because they're played poorly, I guess I would say. Like, I think the people who want to play land destruction tend to experiment with it in a way that is a little bit more chaotic and it just gets thrown out there versus really like trying to pick their moment and break parity and use it as something to launch a win con off of. So for me, I think 8 times out of 10, this is going to make me salty if someone plays it against me. And those other 2 times, someone has a game plan and they're going to take this and push it into a win.
Yep.
What about you, Mike? Does this make you feel salty?
I mean, similar to you guys, I have not seen this in a game very often. I do think it's really interesting to kind of draw some parallels to some cards that we do see played a little bit more. Like there's, what's the white Gear Hulk?
Cataclysmic Gear Hulk.
Right, Cataclysmic Gear Hulk. That is very similar. I think it misses the lands though, so it's like a little less scary. And there's also Balance, which we don't see, but is banned. And does, again, actually less than this card in some ways. It just downgrades everybody to the lowest.
I like Balance
of other people,
a lot.
But it also hits hands, which is a pretty big difference from this.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting that we have some versions of this effect or similar effect that are like not a shocking card to see resolve in the Gear Hulk. Other versions that are so busted they're banned, like Balance. And then this one, which we never see, but is like very high or is in the top 100 salty cards. So I think it's a mix how far like along the spectrum we find effects like this. And I think this particular one, I hope it's mostly run in Super Friends decks because that is the clean, nice way of breaking parity on it that I think is interesting. So
yeah, it seems like the way to break parity on this one is pretty narrow, and that's probably why you aren't seeing it. Because even in a Super Friends deck, I mean, just doing regular land destruction is probably still going to get you the value that you need and maybe leave you with some like the tokens that you're creating and stuff like that.
this board wipes you though. Also, this lets you wipe everyone else's board,
Yeah.
and then uptick your walkers to make tokens to block, and then you deal with each of your opponent's single creature that's left.
For sure. Yeah. It just feels very niche. And
Yeah.
even the thing with like leaving somebody with one creature, like if I'm playing my Rafik of the Many deck, mark your bingo cards at home, everybody. I mentioned Rafik. If I'm playing Rafik, that's the creature I'm going to keep. And I'll probably keep a really good aura. And I think
a pretty decent equipment.
Yeah, and I think I'll just be fine. you
Yeah.
know?
You might just be dead.
I mean, maybe I should put this in Rafik is what I'm learning.
Wait a second. Salty card or new tech?
Yeah, I also think it's soft banned too, because mass land destruction is so not acceptable at most casual tables.
Yeah.
So I think that we'd probably be more salty about it if we saw it more often.
Yeah, that's so true.
100%. Yeah. So many of these MLD things, it's just like theoretical salt. And most of the moments that I can point to where MLD was cast against me, it's like, it's like I said, like somebody just being like, I found this card. Isn't this interesting? And they cast it and we're like, okay, well, now we all have to rebuild and this is going to be very slow.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. Land destruction just falls into such a weird spot. You go, what's the strongest thing you can do in Commander? The answer is not blow up all lands. The answer is take that same amount of mana and just win the game instead.
Yeah.
So it's like not the best thing to do. So you kind of almost are only going to see it from people who actively just want to play it. Like, they play it because I want to blow up all lands. And it's like, all right, that ends up falling somewhere on the higher end of power, but it's not the strongest thing you can do. So I feel like even like from a power perspective, you're not going to see people wanting to do that very often.
I mean, it definitely depends on your game plan. If you're cheating stuff out, or if their lands are really something that's like killing it. I remember one time I was playing Kalia against Beezy's deck, and he made all of his creatures.
I had a Shia, so
and then
I'm not getting board wiped.
And then I played Armageddon because I have Kalia. I'm just going to cheat out fatties every turn.
I lost my whole board.
And he went, "Yep, I'm just going to scoop."
I was so decisively beaten.
That
was like a higher power game. We knew that was possible.
That's a really good point, Beezy, because like even if you're doing the trick, even if you are, let's say, casting this spell and then putting Interference Protection on top, that's 7 mana to not win the game
like at all.
Whereas you could just pay 1 extra mana and cast like Moonshaker Cavalry and
any number of cards. Yeah,
there's so many other things,
from CDH combo infinites to just like overwhelm them.
Yeah, big beaters.
And like actually just win the game in that moment. So
it feels like I almost would rather know why you want to play land destruction. Like you just want to be different. You just want to meme. Like
I just want to see the light leave your eyes.
At least from YouTube comments though. Seriously, I've talked about like there was a video we did where it was like, hey, I think you could cut a lot of the green signets in your green decks just for regular ramp because it'll stick around more. And the amount of comments I got from people who are like, I just enjoy destroying all the lands. Oh, you say that until I blow up all your lands. And I'm like, you people, I don't know if you're being serious, but like if you're actually serious and you think that this is hilarious, like that's a whole separate discussion. I would love to know why.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
That feels like a social ineptitude thing.
Also, you can blow up all my artifacts too. It's not like artifacts or mana dorks are like immune to the same removal that land. Yeah.
It's just less taboo to run a Vandal Blast versus a Armageddon.
Yeah. Who would tell me that Simic Signet is more immune to removal than Forest?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's insane.
Yeah.
Well, we do have phase 2 of our salty card of the week, which is trying to guess where in the top 100 salty cards it is. So,
and Mike, are we on the new updated list yet?
We are still on the old list because I haven't taken the time to figure it out, and I still don't think they've published it. But
I don't think they have either.
Switch as soon as they have. So, yeah, Sam, would you mind kicking us off here?
I'm happy to go first because going first usually means you don't do well.
Oh, the fear factor rule.
I'm going to guess 33 for this one.
Wow. So the numbers that came into my head way back when you said Cataclysm was 34, 35, and 36. So I'm going to have to pick the average and say 35.
Wow. It's a tight race.
I know.
I was actually thinking 30s too, but I think it might be a little bit higher considering land destruction is so feared, but it's so theoretical. I'm going to guess like 29.
Then Beezy takes it because it is 71.
Oh, I'm so good.
71. We're so off.
Yeah.
Wow.
There are some land destruction-y things that are even less salty than this, technically, but they're a little more narrow. This one is well off of like Armageddon. Armageddon is at 6, but
I
for
know
some
top
reason,
10.
yeah,
Wow.
for some reason that one extra land, I guess, and,
Okay.
and wiping
weird.
all the other
I can
permanents
keep one?
somehow
Yeah.
makes this more okay than Armageddon.
Yeah. You don't have to keep all your creatures and stuff, but like
Talk to me when you
all the
remove my
land.
last creature.
Yeah, exactly.
What is? I didn't hear no bell.
Yeah. I guess I'll just keep my token generator in my Gaia's Cradle then. Whatever.
Yeah.
Might be.
Well, that wraps it up for the salty card of the week.
Wonderful.
Well, thanks, Mike, for the lovely salty card. And thank you to our Salt Packet Plus tiered patrons that we shout out at the end of every episode. Rothbox, Bobo Fett, Sam Power Gamer, Clearbrook, and Captain Cross. Thanks for the support, y'all. We really, really appreciate it. And thank you to me and Beezy, Nitpicking Nerds, for coming into the salt mine with us today.
Thank you.
This was a lot of
Thank
fun.
you, Sam. No, we loved being here. We had a lot of fun.
I had it all pent up, so in another month I'm gonna have to come on again and just sort of make this my routine therapy session.
Hey, we would love to have you back on.
Once I build up enough salt.
We'd love to be back, and BZ will build up enough salt in 2 weeks. So don't make too many promises.
We'll play 4 games. Where's Sam?
Yeah, he texts you, I'm ready.
I mean, you can always submit a salty story and we'll read
It's
it on
true.
the air too. That would be
You have that
even
much time?
better.
I'll just start it with, yeah, I'm famous, so why don't you just move this up to the front?
We won't write too much here. We won't make this short and sweet. We just gonna want to get our anger out.
Just 10 pages, no spaces.
Yeah.
So if people are looking for more of that Nitpicking Nerds content, where can they find you both?
It's very simple. You just need to be on YouTube. We make long form, regular videos. We make short form content. We also are now doing live streams, and there's even some like videos YouTube is categorized as like podcasts. So we're kind of the one-stop shop for Commander content on
Yeah,
YouTube.
come hang out with us when we do streams. Come check out some content. We do monthly series like Budget Bombs, Most Worth Buying.
Maybe most guests can't say this. A video came out today. You can just go watch it.
Damn.
No matter what day it is.
We can guarantee
Wow.
whenever you put it out, we have a video.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Check out
That
our
is so
newest
true.
video that launched today.
I love that. Well, thanks again for both of you coming on the show. It was super, super fun.
It was great.
We had a great time.
And thank you to all the prospectors at home for tuning into another episode of the Howling Salt Mine. If you want more Howling Salt Mine content, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Howling Salt Mine. Obviously, we have some shout outs in the show, so you can check out those tiers. You can request salty songs. I will hand draw you tokens that I'll send to you every single month. And you can check out our extra content. We've got our extra salt series every month and our Stray Grains episodes where we have 1 or 2, sometimes 3 dropping every single week. So check out all that amazing content. Plus our Discord, super fun. Just hang out, chit chat, play games once a month. It's a good time. If you have a salty story that you want submitted on a future episode, send it to our Gmail at thehowlingsaltmine@gmail.com or submit it through our website, Howling Salt Mine or The Howling Salt Mine. Or DM it to us on any social. It will get to us eventually, and we will put it in the queue. Also, we have some awesome merchandise you guys should check out. We've got our bonfire store, and we are also selling custom Dragon Shield sleeves. You can find all that stuff on our website and in our link tree. All the links are in the information below in the podcast notes. Another thing you can do to help out the podcast is give us a 5-star rating in your favorite podcast app of choice. That really does help us stick out in the algorithm and help new people find us in the wilds of Spotify, Apple Podcasts, what have you. And lastly, we got to shout them out. We shout them out every episode. Our amazing podcast artist, JD Burnett, for giving us our beautiful podcast art. If you're ever in Asheville, North Carolina, hit him up and get a tattoo. He's a really awesome guy. And this is when Tony would say, 10,000 subscribers or bust. And I'd say, thanks, Tony.
And I'd huff and puff.
Yeah,
upset
Mike will
in the
huff
corner.
and puff because he doesn't want to get a tattoo, but he's contractually obligated when we get 10,000 subs to get a tattoo.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. It's
like
news
just
to me
Mike
every
or
time,
all
too.
of you, and Mike just doesn't want to.
Oh, no, all of us.
All
but
of us.
Mike doesn't
And
want
I
to.
don't want
I didn't know if you're like, if we get to know Mike in particular is
Mike,
getting
you
the
gotta-
tattoo.
Just
that
you,
actually
Mike.
would be. I
That would be wild.
I am almost more on board with that because of how funny it is.
Well, thanks again, Mia, and thanks again, Beezy, for coming on the show. We really appreciated it.
Thanks for
Thank you
having
so
us.
much for having us.
And as always, stay salty and don't forget to draw an additional card during your draw step.
It's the Howling Salt Mine. The Howling Salt Mine.
are you afraid to say the D word? And I'm like, it's a magic card, but yes, I'm afraid YouTube won't let me say damn.
Oh, no. It's literally a card. I cast a spell that I will not be naming.
Yeah.
I'm casting Darn Overloaded.
I just ate so much fucking pasta, dude. I was just
Dude,
like, oh.
I ate some udon quite quickly.
Yeah.
I ate an entire order of udon in like 7 minutes.
Yeah, I was inhaling some angel hair, dude. Sometimes with like the really small pastas, I feel like you don't even need to swallow them or chew them. You don't even need to chew them. You do need to swallow them.
Sometimes you just slurp them all the way down.
Yep. You don't even swallow it. You just let it hang out in your mouth and dissolve slowly.
Oh, yeah?
Let's do it. Oh, wow. This is a long one. Let's do a different one first.
We're never going back to that one.
No, I will. I have to at one point.
What do we think the salt ratings are on this card? Or this... Oh, gosh.
Oh, wow.
Usually the salt ratings I ask for are the salty cards, so...
Why do you have that, by the way? What is happening? Did I miss something?
I wanted to say damn, and I brought him out.
Shadow the Hedgehog's just hanging out with us.
Shadow we just wanted a fifth person on the episode.
The mine card is already pretty crowded.
The mine cards.
Yeah.
When we pull him out in 2, I said damn, so I had to bring him out.
Well, Shadow's just running behind. He can keep up.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah, he's running at the speed of sound. Thanks, Mike. You definitely didn't forget your line, and you remembered it perfectly.